Wig, did you just say wig? Wig, okay. I know, wig. I feel that already. Wig, okay. Wig, did you just say wig? Wig, okay. I am ready for my wig to go flying.
Oh, hi kids.
Hello.
I think this is early March edition, right, Caitlin?
No, yes?
Yes. We just talked about it. I hope we had a lovely, very short February. It's been a chilly one so far. And drag is dead and we lost a glam. So
Oh yeah. But we
Uh,
talked about losing already, right?
yeah, probably.
Okay, I think we did.
Yeah.
Okay.
We're recording this before Caitlin's big wedding, so you
I
might
will be married
yeah, when this
by the
episode
time
when this episode comes out, Caitlin will be a married woman.
Yeah.
So or a married man.
Yeah. Well, we're already married.
We haven't
so
decided, yeah.
I guess we're a polygamous like marriage now. There's
Beautiful.
3 of us.
The 3 of us. Anyways, who are we talking to today? What are we doing?
I thought you would introduce.
Yeah,
we didn't even introduce ourselves.
I
We're
know,
such a mess on Mondays.
We did this last time too. I'm Martyr.
I'm September.
And this is Wigging Out. Anyways, like I was saying, who we doing? Who we talking to?
Why don't you introduce them?
I will. She's my
I always have to do it.
My fellow Bitchfest winner. She's in the winner circles with me. She's the beauty of Mad Mondays. Atomic Annie.
Yay!
Stunning. I will absolutely claim being the beauty of Mad Mondays, having literally never attended.
Exactly.
But referenced like a ghost is something that I'll take.
Yeah. I feel like I've only seen you. Oh, I've seen you at Bitchfest, but I've seen you at Metro the most often. Besides that,
Yeah.
So
I think we overlap there.
I thought you were gonna say the beauty of Bushwick, and I was like, okay.
I know. I was like, I like that.
Okay, beauty of Bushwick. There you go.
Yeah, that's way better.
How are you, my darling?
I'm good. It's a Monday morning, so it's it is what it is. But I'm hanging in there, having a good time.
So we talked a little bit about the glams just now, but I wanted to talk about the glams with you because I saw you there. And I have to give you a lot of props because I've been going to the glams for a long time, an old lady, but like going to the glams back in the day, like everyone was really unique and like stood out with their looks and like their paint and all that. And now it's just like a bunch of white twinks that all have the same face, and I don't know who
Silver
anyone
dresses.
is. Yeah, like Marsha was there, and I would have never have known. Like if they had not introduced her on that stage, I wouldn't have known she was there. But I have to give you a lot of props because you really stood out to me with your look. I was like, ooh,
thank you.
Someone like has like an actual like point of view. Like
I appreciate that. Yeah, it was like a very I guess I could describe the glams as like overstimulating. It was just a lot of drag all at once. It was truly the everything everywhere all at once of Brooklyn, Manhattan, and Queens all together in a room. And I don't think I've been around that much Manhattan drag all at once before, which was interesting. I really hadn't it hadn't occurred to me up until like last month, and especially with the glams, how just sort of like Brooklyn based and focused I've been in. But I appreciate that. I think that like I don't want to say no one looked like everyone looked great, but I think I always really appreciate, and I think it's partially why I've gravitated towards Brooklyn, like a real honed in perspective and point of view. And I think that like that doesn't necessarily mean you don't have to be polished, but if you can really have your own unique thing that you're doing, I feel like that's the most important thing that people should be focusing on. And I kind of miss that about drag.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Things have changed so much.
I'm still salty about the woman that gave me the up and down.
Wait, so explain this story to me because I don't really know what you were talking about when you talk about this.
I was just like running late to the glams, and I was just like, I was in my wedding dress and my red hair and my usual look. And there was a drag queen outside. She was like older, but she's very like pageant. She was older, sorry, Diva. And she I think she was like having a smoke or whatever. She was just like in an elegant dress and like a nice updo. So she looked very much like a pageant queen kind of thing. And I was passing her and I was just like, "Hi, how are you?" Because she just kept staring at me. And I'm like, okay. And as I said, like, "How are you?" She just went like gave me the full up and down and like ignored me afterwards. And I was like,
Oh,
okay.
Oh,
Like,
that's
sorry, Diva.
hostile.
Exactly. And honestly, that's why I don't like Manhattan that much, because it's just like I came with you with respect and was not given that back at all.
I also just feel like those barriers between like really femme pageanty drag queens and more alternative artists, I feel like it's so invented. You know what I mean? Like it's like I don't know, it really is like a weird little stigma that's just like created by like individual girls. I'd have never understood it. And it's like, I don't know, you can be pretty or you can be really femme or you can have a very sort of like standardized look, and like that shouldn't say anything about how you feel about people who do something a little bit more grunge or like I don't know.
Yeah.
That has literally never made any sense to me.
Yeah. I've been dealing with that since I started. So it's
I bet.
nothing new.
at least your makeup is better now.
See, drag me can't win, but it's true. It is much better now. I always say, I'm like, who let me outside the house? No, you look gorge at the glams. You and Nothing and Mick.
Mr. E Minx. It's a
Thank
hard
you.
one.
I was just like, I know it has an M in it somewhere.
Right.
No, I saw like it was my Brooklyn Divas, like in the you guys were like on the left
Yeah.
center area.
Yeah, you were like right
We-
in the center of like the.
Yeah.
We did
the
not
bustle.
pay for VIP tickets, so we made sure to get a table early and snag one.
There you go. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what we do. We're
My-
always at the losers table,
Yeah.
except for Martyr.
Well, you can join me at the not nominated table anytime.
That used to be our table until the pandemic.
I'm sure I'll join you someday.
Yes,
You will, but you'll
Um,
probably
At the
win.
losers table. Yeah, we'll see.
I just one more thing about the glam. Since we talked about Brooklyn a little bit, like this was the first Glam Awards where I really felt Brooklyn's presence. Usually, like Brooklyn is a very like Bushwick might win, and that would be it. Like that's the only
Yeah.
like representation there is at the Glam. So it was nice. It felt very like honestly, it was probably more than like 60% of the awards went to like Brooklyn based like performers and venues, which is crazy.
Which was super exciting. It was my first glams this year. Last year I didn't feel like quite fully baked enough
Mhm.
to like justify spending $40 to go like network or whatever. But
Yeah.
I felt like even in just seeing who won last year versus this year, I think that at least now it seems like a lot of the people who I thought of as like Brooklyn queens or Brooklyn artists really have been doing a lot of work in multiple boroughs, and
Yeah.
I think that really showed with who won. And it wasn't quite like a sweep, but I would
No.
say that Brooklyn really dominated in most of the categories, which was like cool to see.
Yeah, I never thought that would ever happen. So
And
it's
Exciting.
even if we were nominated in like or only one nominee in each category, they still usually got it. Like I'm thinking like
Which is dope.
Venna was like the only Brooklyn door goddess and she snagged
Yeah.
it. So
And I think Mamshi as well for comedy.
Yeah.
I don't know if there were other
yes,
Brooklyn
yeah.
girls.
Mhm.
yeah. Yay.
Yay.
Love sentiment.
All right, enough about the glams. Let's move on to you, Tom. So where are you from originally?
I'm originally from the Bay Area. I moved out here about a year and a half ago for college, and kind of drag sprouted from there. But I'd been experimenting with it in the Bay for a little bit before I moved, and then with COVID, it kind of was official when I moved.
What was life like growing up in like San Francisco?
It was cool. It was a very queer environment, but I don't think I really ever really tapped into like the artistic element of queerness. It was a lot of just sort of like understanding that gay people were like present in my community, but it was never necessarily like something that, especially because I'm 21, and so it's like I wasn't aged into the scene when I was living there. And so it was more so like understanding that there were people like me, but it wasn't necessarily something I had access to. And so it was this weird dichotomy of like knowing that we had a lot of history in San Francisco, and there was the Castro and you know, like the Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence, and it was amazing. But like, I didn't experiment with the drag scene there until I would like go home to see family and like pick up a couple gigs and then really get to know the scene, which I guess has kind of like retroactively been cool, but it was definitely like not linear, I would say.
Well, like that area's changed so much. Like it's so like outpriced everybody
Oh,
who's
completely.
living there.
It's very New York in that way.
Yes. When I go there, well, I've only been there once, but when I've been there, like I was just like, am I in New York right now? Like it feels like
Exactly.
we're in New York.
Certainly Williamsburg prices for a lot of the things.
Oof.
Definitely.
Oof. So did you really not start like getting into the drag scene until you moved here? Or
Yeah,
Yeah.
I always kind of like go back and forth on when I tell people I started drag, because the first time I went out in drag was in like, I want to say fall, probably Halloween of like 2019. But I never performed until October of 2021. So I was like doing drag, and I was trying to like figure out my look all throughout COVID. But I hadn't performed until um like the first month after I moved here. So it's only been about a year and some change of performing.
And look at all the shit that you've done.
I'm like, and now they're gonna cast you on Drag Race.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, it's been like, I don't know, it's interesting being in such a big scene, because I think that you work so hard just for like name recognition, where I feel like in smaller scenes you can kind of come onto the scene, and if you have a point of interest to your drag, whether it's the look or the performance or like you're a great host, that's sort of enough, and that's great, and I love how that's done, but that's just not the New York experience at all. And you can be doing like top tier stuff, and people just don't know who you are, and like it's not a product of the quality of what you're giving, it's just sort of like the volume of how much drag there is. And so it's like been interesting to navigate, knowing that San Francisco has such a tight knit community, because I mean the city's like what, 7 miles big.
Oh.
um
And
and
it's
so
also very limited how many clubs there are there too.
exactly, and it feels like here there's like so many ways that you can go about entering the scene, that like y'all said, it's like hard to really be able to like stop and like look at what you've accomplished, because it's like all about the hustle in a lot of ways.
What made you interested in drag? When were you like, I want to do this?
I think that it came from this sort of dilemma I was having around gender, where for a while I was kind of like questioning what was going on. And I used to dress, especially just like day to day, a lot more kind of out there. And it didn't feel as like affirming as I guess I needed it to be. And I was always so interested in like, whether it was like movies I would watch as a kid, or I was really into manga, and I got really into like fashion and design and like just sort of fashion history. And it never felt like me dressing sort of as flamboyantly as I wanted every day was like necessarily going far enough. And mixing that with like feeling confused gender wise, drag was something I kind of came to, I would say, like naturally. And then as I started going out in it more, it felt like, I guess affirming would be like the right word. And it felt like all of the sort of influences and really like deep interests I had as a kid, whether it was like watching, you know, like the 90s X-Men cartoons and being like, why do I like Rogue so much? Um, all of that stuff kind of like started to make sense once drag became an interest, I would say.
How did you come up with your drag name?
Um, I came up with my drag name because the 80s are like a huge point of influence for me. And I remember the first person that really like changed my outlook on like visual representations of gender was Annie Lennox. And I
Mm.
watched her in the Sweet Dreams music video with her like orange buzz cut in the like dominatrix suit. And I was so into it. And I loved that song as a kid. And so Annie is after her. And then the atomic part of it was, there's this movie, I think it was like a comic book or like a graphic novel before, but the movie was starring Charlize Theron, and it was called Atomic Blonde. And it was basically like female James Bond. And I grew up watching Bond movies, and I was so obsessed with like all the Bond girls and like Grace Jones particularly. And her name, I think, was like Mayday or something. And so I loved the whole like, a lot of them had like alliteration. A lot of them sort of sounded like supervillains a little bit. And so Atomic Annie kind of came from that. And then I Googled it just to make sure no one had it. And it's the
Mm.
name of like a nuclear weapon that was used in the 80s. And I was like,
Mhm.
that's perfect.
There you go.
Um,
Oh,
yeah. So
I
it
like
was meant to be, I
that.
guess.
I love
for
that.
sure.
Yeah.
So you kind of like started basically during the pandemic. So how did you
Yeah.
figure out your performance style?
I think that's more recent, and I think that it's something I'm still very much like coming into because I think coming onto the scene, I don't necessarily think I would. You can look back on what you did like 2 weeks ago when you do drag and be like horrified by it. But I think that all things considered, I came into the scene like pretty figured out with what I wanted my look to roughly be. I've definitely come a long way, but I think that performance was always the thing I was the most insecure about. Just because I'm not a dancer in any capacity. And I felt like when you do drag, especially like when I started, I was like doing it from my bedroom and it was during COVID. And the only representations you see are like the clips that go viral online of like some local girl like absolutely giving it and being all stunty, or queens on Drag Race getting rewarded for being super flexible and doing all these things. And so I think that that was always a point of insecurity for me. And I think that it really took going to see drag in Brooklyn to really make that like connection for me. And I think Bitchfest was a huge piece of that because there are ways that you can be super engaging as a performer and not have it necessarily be about like when you're how you're doing the most movement or how you're doing the most tricks. And I think really tapping into like, I would say for me, it's all about emotions. And when I'm sometimes, you just have an off night, or sometimes you are, performing at a venue where you're like, I have to do a top 40 song or else I'm not going to get paid. But when I really have full creative control and when I'm in a good mood, it's really all about emotions and that very like sad, hot girl kind of vibe for me.
So we asked you to describe yourself, and you said you have a dash of good old fashioned insult comedy.
Yeah.
Where is that coming from, and like how does that work in Brooklyn when I feel like a lot of people are nervous about like going there?
Yeah, I mean, I think Martyr has experienced this firsthand, but I think a big part of I think a big part of how I've and again it's very recent, and I think that like having the opportunity through Bitchfest and doing a lot of competitions, it's like the first time I've really been able to be on the mic.
Mhm.
And that was also something that like I think when you're a newer queen, you don't even think about in terms of like you're being on the mic is like not something that it's so far off as a goal, I guess, that you don't really think about, what am I going to say? How am I going to come off? How am I going to, banter with this audience? Because you're so focused on like, how do I look? How will I perform? How can I be backstage? And I think when that nervousness sort of kicks in for me, I think about like the queens that I saw when I first started going to shows and sneaking into clubs. And it really was the queens who would be able to like read each other back and forth with love. And like, I'm a huge fan of Joan Rivers and a lot of those, like, I mean, I grew up in like a New York Jewish family, and a lot of our love for each other hinges on just kind of being horrible to each other. And, that's a lot to unpack. But I think that for me, when I am told to improv on a mic, it really comes from like, how can I drag a girl that I have so much respect for, and just, have a good time? Because audiences also love that.
Yeah.
I feel like it's such a lost art form right now because
it so is.
Like people are really scared about backlash, I guess.
Like the girls on Drag Race are so tame to each other, and these fans are like having their accounts deleted and sending them death threats, and it's like nothing they're saying. Like if y'all heard what went on backstage at Come On Everybody, or like literally anywhere in New York, like people would be horrified if that's what if that's the metric they're grading it on.
Well, I'm just like, why don't you want drag queens to be drag queens? Like
exactly.
They're not little Barbie dolls,
Right.
Speak for yourself. I'm so petite and plastic.
Yeah, you're Sugar and Spice's third member.
Yeah. What is it? Sugar and Spice and All Things Nice. Yeah, that's
me. You're everything nice.
Everything nice.
Yeah. And on that note, I think we should take our first little break. We'll be right back, kids. We're gonna talk about Bitchfest.
Bye.
Bye.
Wig, okay. I know, wig. I feel that already. Wig, okay. Wig, did you just say wig? Wig, okay. I am ready.
And we're back.
We're back. Such a long break.
Long break. Longer than I don't know. I can't think of anything
Longer
right
than each week's Drag Race episode.
Yes. Honestly,
Not long at all.
not long enough. Longer than the Drag Race runways for sure. For
Longer than Lux
We'll say
Noir's
that.
wig.
40-inch unit.
So Annie, you recently just won Bitchfest with
I did.
your co
So what is Bitchfest for people who don't know what it is?
Damn bitch. Okay.
Because we always talk about like these competitions, but like we
Yeah.
have listeners from all over the world and like they don't know what a niche New York competition is.
Yeah.
Martyr,
True.
do you want to explain it or should
Yeah,
I?
you should either one.
I mean,
You're
I can.
both winners, so
The exclusive winner circle of this cycle is now 4 people, even though there's only been 3 months.
which we will get into.
Yeah. So Bitchfest is a competition, a weekly competition hosted by Zavaleta from Dragula season 4, excuse me. And it's just sort of like she jokes it's gay church, but it kind of is. It's just like it's a big community builder. I've been every week since I've won because of just like how
Drag me.
no, like literally it's not shade against you. It's just like I have gotten like more friends and more engagement from just like going out and like supporting everybody, and like you get to see like honestly like cutting edge art in the Brooklyn scene. It's shit like people are like either afraid to do or don't have like the space to perform. So it's like it's very like a battle of the brains kind of sometimes. But it's just very creative, very I wouldn't say cutthroat, but like just we kind of uplift each other to do the best that you could possibly do. That's why I like it. And Annie won in December. How was your experience?
It was good. It was short. It was
short.
1 week shorter, but I like to think that because I did the sort of open casting call thing, I got the full experience. But it was fun. I was mentioning, or I guess like about to mention earlier, that part of my initial, I wasn't even conscious of it, but my initial sort of goal and nervousness going into Bitchfest was like people like you and like Mamshi and Pony were all artists that I was such huge fans of. And I was like, more than anything, I was like, I don't want to come off as untalented to these people I like am a huge fan of. And I think that was sort of my biggest thing. And I think part of that pressure, rather than because like I love Zava so much, and I think that like the way that she gives you feedback on your art is like this really chaotic, very like helpful way, because it's like she doesn't hold back and she'll let you know exactly what her very first reaction was. And I think that that's really useful because she's not like she's not mincing words ever, and I appreciated that. But I think that more so my anxiety was coming from like I want to impress the people that really motivated me to like get out and perform in the scene more. I think the experience was good. Our cycle was, I think, already pretty notorious for being super messy. We had a contestant drop because of critiques they got, who is my girl, and so I absolutely respect that choice. And it made it a hell of a lot easier for me because I was 1 out of 2 winners out of I think 4 people who were left standing. Christmas was supposed to be the final week of ours, and no one was in town, so it was only 3 weeks. But the check still cleared.
There you go,
and that's really all that matters. But it was fun, and I think that above everything else, I really nailed down what vibe of a performer I am, which I think was helpful because I had just come from losing a bunch of competitions and performing music that looking back, I really couldn't tell you why I chose what I chose. I was doing like pop music and whatever, and I really had gotten in my head about like becoming this chameleon for every competition in order to win, and I hadn't won anything. And I would always feel weird after because it was like I tried to do a song that I can't, that requires more movement than I'm able to do or whatever. And really tapping into this, like, I think it was the fact that our first week, which I won of Bitchfest, was like around emotions. And that was something that I hadn't really tapped into. I had never really done a ballad or anything before. And getting such a positive response from doing that, and then continuing to sort of do variations on that same idea of like being this beautiful, heartbroken artist who tapped into the more minimalistic side of performing. I think that's really what motivated me to be like, oh, I can actually win this, because I was like, I don't want to go to the end and not win anything, because it's like I'm not going to feel confident. And that first week really shifted my goal, I would say, and really helped me grow.
You're welcome, because it was inspired by me.
Thank God. I'll send you some residuals.
Thank you. And I'm not joking. Zava did say the challenge was inspired by me, because I did.
What?
It was the week right after I won. And she said, I guess I invoked some emotions in her, and she was thinking about stuff, and so she's like, "Thank you, Martyr," and I was like, "You're welcome, bitch."
Aw, that's nice.
So yeah, I'm taking credit. I don't care.
I also think
Wow.
too, what was so interesting about competing at Bitchfest, and Martyr, I know you're not as like much of a baby as I am, and I think that in a lot of ways, what was so interesting for me in working with Zava is like there's this sort of separation that I think the internet has created and these shows have created, where it's like in a lot of people's minds there's this separation between like people who are local performers and people who've been on TV. And I think being able to work so intimately with someone who was on a show that I watched and enjoyed, and like it really made a lot of those like performers who have been on those platforms feel a lot less far away. And I felt like there's always this sort of inferiority complex you have when it's like people from Drag Race or people from Dragula decide to like, it's almost looked at as like charity work when they're like, oh, we'll do a show with like a cast of local girls instead of some like weird like Voss whatever. And I think that working with someone who had been on TV and having such a, I would say, like deep relationship with every cast member, I guess from Zava's perspective, it was like it shifted things for me, because it was like those shows and those casts can feel a little far away if you're not really meshed into the scene. And I think it was important to like understand that, like, you know, we're all just trying to pay our rent and do art and make people feel something. And regardless of what our experience has been, I think that that's like, that doesn't change. I guess it shouldn't change.
Yeah.
Well,
No,
for that, I feel like it's a little full circle, because I remember when Zavaleta used to compete and
Yeah.
win competitions, and like
Right.
nobody knew who she was either.
Mm.
So
Yeah.
I'm glad like this space exists. So like this circle.
It feels like she gives back in a way,
Yeah.
and that's part of the beauty of Bitchfest, which I love.
Yeah. I think she just like kind of has an understanding of like we're all just weirdos making our art, like you said, and she just wants
Exactly.
to uplift that. And I mean, look at the beast that it's become.
Right.
I highly suggest our listeners to come to a night at Bitchfest, just one, to see how it is. You probably will be back, because it's always something.
100%.
Yeah.
So just one more thing about Bitchfest. What was it like to share the title with Slagatha?
It was great, to be honest with you. Because I think a worry that I had as someone who, I have ADHD, and like I have to be in the right mood to be kind of fun to be around, if you get what I'm saying. And like I was always so focused on what I was presenting when I was doing a competition or when I was doing a show, of how I was coming off to a host so I could get booked or whatever, that I was so focused on what was happening on stage that I wasn't thinking about what was going on backstage. And um, as soon as I started having fun with people that I was meeting, you know, not on stage, just other performers when we were getting ready or whatever, it really started to like show in my drag that I was like having a better time. And Slagatha was one of those people that like I had just started meeting via doing competitions, and like I lost Dragnet, and then the month later she lost Dragnet, and we were kind of like complaining about, I guess like how that was being judged is how I'll put it, and what have you. And it was like cool to really get to know her a lot more. And to be honest with you, I loved my cast so much. I would have been happy to win alongside any of them. But I'm glad it was Slagatha, because I think that really brought us closer, and we each do such different things that it was cool to be able to like share the win for doing such distinctly good but in different ways art, I would say.
Yeah, you guys were both like my favorite performers from that cast.
Thank you. I
Yeah.
appreciate that.
And Slagatha's literally my literal neighbor. She's around the corner from
Right.
me. I know,
You live
right?
next to everybody. I swear to God.
Exactly.
It's like
I'm very
one giant
central.
drag block.
I'm very central, so
Completely.
I can't help it. But
Girl
uh,
about town, baby.
mm. No, you both did something because at the beginning of the competition or this cycle, like Zava was like, we're not doing twinners. We're not, it's not happening.
Oh, did she?
Yes.
Which I don't think any of us bought.
She's
Oh,
broken
really?
it
Okay.
twice so far, and it's only been 3 months.
3 months.
And so it was like either of you could have taken it at the finale night. So I wasn't I was rooting for both of you, but to have you both join, I'm like, hell yeah.
Yeah.
I
Are you
can't wait.
nervous now?
Well, yes and no. Yes, because I want the title, but no, because like at the end of the day, like whoever takes it doesn't take away that we
No.
won. So or
And
like
what's also cool is like it's all our friends, you know what I mean?
yeah,
Like we're gonna
yeah,
be doing this. I'm sure it's gonna be an absolute disaster, but we're gonna
yeah,
be doing this huge fun finale thing, like with
yeah,
like not just like coworkers, but like people that we've hung out with, and
yeah.
you know, like it's cool. It's like it really is like a family, and I feel like it sounds so corny, but it's such a beautiful community.
I'm more upset about like when the whole thing's like gonna be over, just because we won't have an excuse to like hang out every week. But like, I'm
Well,
sure
Exactly.
maybe
we'll
the
be fine.
winner should like start another like
We'll be the
equivalent.
we'll be the fist. Was it the Feast of Bitch or something?
Here for
Yeah,
it.
just
Yeah.
start a weekly show
Yeah.
on Sundays.
Local at the Rosemont, coming to you soon.
We don't dead name Bitchfest's old venue.
Oh well,
Yeah.
my God.
Well, the venue won the Grammys too, the GLAM Award.
Oh,
Yeah,
come on,
there you go.
everybody. Yeah,
Yeah,
it did.
Mhm.
As it should.
Yeah, it's
as
a
it should. I agree.
it's a very unique space. I walk by it every day for work. And I will always just peek my head in as I'm walking home to see like what's going on, because I'm just like it's a good space. They treat their performers really well, and the bar staff's like
Agreed.
really friendly.
Well, it's one like in Manhattan, you expect a little bit like higher end like technical production, but like this is like the only high end Brooklyn technical besides $3 bill, I'd say, like for
Definitely.
like shows.
Yeah,
Like the lighting and the sound, like it's
Agreed.
like really like professional.
Also, it sounds ironic because the stage is actually quite small, but it is
Yeah.
one of the largest stages in Brooklyn.
It is.
Yeah.
Which is sad, but also I
Yeah.
love that. And also, I am a girl that will get out of breath when I'm performing, and so it is great because it is right where I need to be able to sit down. And so I will always appreciate Come On Everybody for being not only a stage but a chair.
Oh my God. Yeah. Well, speaking about Bitchfest and to the other, I guess, major competition that you competed in, Dragnet. How was that?
Yes.
You alluded to some stuff, but how was that? Tell us all
Yeah.
about it.
Well, it was my first experience doing it. It was right when I had come back over the summer. I'm a college student. I go to Parsons for fashion styling, I guess is the easiest way I can put it. And I had come back and I had just gotten my apartment figured out, and it was like a hugely stressful experience. And I was getting back into, I think it might have been my first time getting in drag when I had gotten back from figuring all that out. And the first thing that I think I got from it is like I met two of my closest drag friends from it. I met Birth of a Nation and Jupiter Genesis, who are both just the loveliest divas. And it was one of the first times I had a really, really great experience backstage. And so that was absolutely lovely. And I was so happy, I guess, in hindsight, to lose to Jupiter. And that cycle of Dragnet that I did, I'm proud to say I lost fair and square. Because if you've seen Jupiter Genesis perform and you've seen me perform, I think you'll get it. And also it was, albeit it was one of the first time, it was pre-figuring out what my kind of shtick was. And so it was fun, and I got some important feedback that really like changed it. it kind of culminated during Bitchfest, but it was Blue and Iodine who were the guest judges, and they were both encouraging me. And it was also Victoria Holiday, and they were all sort of saying the same variation of like, you're gorgeous and you're very put together and you have this confidence about you, but like, what is the story you're telling and what is the perspective? Because you have all these references and we want them to translate into something the audience can see, and something that like they were basically saying like, don't water yourself down. And that was something that was really like kind of a mind fuck for me for a while. And I kind of waited and I was like, I want to tell a story. I want to do a performance, but I don't think I was fully understanding of like what they meant. I took it as more of like a superficial critique. And so I did the following month of Dragnet. And I was like, I'm going to tell a story. I'm not going to do a pop song. And so in my mind, I was like, I just did Grimes, and it was not as like, in my mind, I was like, that's so artistic. It was not. I don't think it went that well. I mean, I was in the top 2, which like, loved that.
Mhm.
And I thought I won the lip sync. But you know, it's whatever. Like it wasn't a huge deal. And I looking in retrospect, I'm glad that I got that feedback before I did Bitchfest, because I probably wouldn't have won if I didn't have artists I respect telling me like, you stop worrying about the look. Like you need to start like telling the way that you want to tell a story visually should be an aspect of how you think about performance. It shouldn't just stop with what you're wearing and what you're looking like. And that was a very important piece of advice. And it's still something I kind of go back and forth on. But Dragnet was just, it was interesting. And it was also like, the scene is so oversaturated. Like I've worked with Mary Cherry probably more than 5 times. She knows who I am. She does not know my name. And I think that that's sort of like
correct.
an introductory Brooklyn drag experience, is to
Yes.
work with Mary Cherry and not have her know the faintest idea of who you are.
Yep.
I feel like it's sort of a rite of passage at this point. But
Oh yeah.
it was an interesting experience. And I think that like, I definitely had my moment of feeling, it's happened quite a few times where I've done a competition, I've gotten absolutely glowing feedback, and then I don't win. And it was always those nights where it was like a one-off. And so I wasn't building relationship with the cast or with the judges. I mean, clearly I just said like, she doesn't really know who I am, which is fine, because like it's fucking Mary Cherry, you know what I mean? It's like, she's a staple here and she's seen queens come and go, and
Yeah, she doesn't know.
I get it.
You know.
Right. But I think that it was nice to win a competition that A, meant more to me, and B, was longer, because I could actually show a whole body of work instead of like, I do a lip sync and that decides if I win or not.
Yeah.
And that was cool.
I still have never been to Dragnet, so I was gonna ask like, what makes
It's
that
pretty
one
messy, but in a way that's
Okay.
different, because it's less like alternative drag where it's like you expect that, which is
Okay.
the fun part I think of being in the alt scene in Brooklyn. But it's like a bunch of girls doing pop songs in like big styled hair, but just like being absolutely insane to each other. And like sometimes the judges show up and they're completely blacked out, which was my experience for one of them. It was interesting. Metro is a weird place. It's like the
It is
Twilight
a weird
Zone for me.
place. Oh,
It's
yeah.
Weird stuff happens when I perform there.
Yeah.
Weird stuff happens every day there.
Yeah. Listen, she's my home bar, and I love her deeply, so I will not be saying anything disparaging on the
I mean,
podcast.
you know,
It is what
I'm
it
there a
is.
lot too, but like,
Yeah.
it's definitely a weird.
Well, they
place.
pay me to be there, baby.
Oh yeah, so you can't say
Right.
shit, but I can.
Tea. We mentioned a few. What other venues do you like performing in besides Metro and Come On Everybody?
I find sometimes that like the venue can really make or break what happens with my performance. Metro for me is like great, and there's some amazing drag there, but like the setup of the stage and audience and the fact that the floors are like slippery concrete, like I don't love. And I've only performed there once, but $3 Bill I had a great experience doing, because it's like you feel like you're a fucking rock star, you know what I mean? It's like there's the whole pit of people, there's the stairs, it's a huge stage you can do a whole lot with, and like the backstage, I really like that it leads into it. So it's like one of my biggest pet peeves, especially with a lot of the looks that I showcase, is I don't like when the audience sees them before I'm out on stage, because I think that's a huge element of like really winning the audience over, is like the shock value of seeing you in this like great look. And so I like that the backstage, you can just walk up some stairs and you're on the stage all of a sudden. Like I said, I've only performed there once, but I'm sure it won't be the last time. And I had a great experience there, but come on everybody for sure. I performed at the Q recently for Zava's show, and that was just like, it was so different that I think I had a good time just because I was like learning a lot about how different venues in Manhattan are set up.
It's very different.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I performed, I think, as every queen of my level of experience has, a little bit of everywhere. And I think I have my favorites, but to be honest with you, I will not turn anything down. Even if it's a venue I'm not, like partial to or anything.
Oh yeah, got that coin.
Right.
Pivoting a little bit. So your Instagram following is pretty like, it's a lot for someone who's just started in drag. But I noticed going through your Instagram, you use like a lot of different makeup brands. What are your
Yeah.
favorites to use?
I love makeup that's like, I think it's something I've gotten more into recently, but like it was, I don't even think I've spoken to Pony about this, but it was like something that he said a while ago that I really internalized, where I was like going to Bitchfest last spring because I was like wanting to go and drag a lot and like eventually do it. And it happened a little later than I wanted to because I was like fully gone for the whole summer. But I remember going, and Pony and I had like chatted online or whatever. And like he texted me after, he was like, I had no idea you were there. I'm so sorry I didn't say hi. Like I didn't recognize you. You look totally different. And I was like, what does he mean? Oh no. And I really was so in my head about like having like a very recognizable face. And I used to be of the mindset that like every time I had a different look, my makeup had to change, I had to coordinate or whatever. And like getting really into sort of a stamp was when I started really thinking about what makeup I should be using, because it was like, what do I want to just be in my repertoire that I like know how to use? And so it's great that they give me free makeup now because I was keeping them in business. But the Kimchi makeup brand is so good for drag, because I think it's probably like made with that in mind. And I know so many artists who use their stuff. And so that's like honestly mostly what I use. I use a lot of like the Fenty skin products, like not Fenty like skin, like the foundation and whatever, because I find that it's like I get real sweaty and that's great for drag. But something that I've kind of been doing a lot more is like doing exactly the same face every single time and having it be very neutral. But I've been enjoying like I'm not loving the wave of like drag queens putting on no makeup anymore. And so I really like having obviously very like polished and very well executed, but I like just looking absolutely beat. And I think that being very like matte and being very having like shadow and light and having the contrast be very high, but still being very like soft is, I guess, sort of what I look for. And so like stuff that really blends well, stuff that's really, really matte, I like. So yeah.
How did you come up with your eyebrows? Because I think they're really distinct.
Thank you. I think that what's interesting is like as I'm doing shows and being able to paint a lot faster, I feel like everyone used to be like a 4-hour painter. I've got it down in like 90 minutes, pretty much every single time, which is great. But I think that they're slowly getting like thinner and thinner. But I think that initially I wanted something that felt very like villainous. And so I love a real like ombre, very like sharp brow. And even if I end up going like real thin, I like the look of just your eyebrows being sort of a roadmap for how you paint your eyes. Because I think that if like you do it too low or you use the front of your brow as a stencil, you run the risk of like not giving yourself enough real estate to really like work with and change the shape of what's going on. So I think I just love like a big lip and a real bitchy brow. I feel like are stuff that I love to see on people's faces.
I agree. That's kind of what I was saying about when we opened the show. Like, I just feel like everyone's just like face is stamped the same way.
Everyone's the same. And
it's like
it's
what
YouTube
happened?
tutorials.
Yeah, it's all the YouTube. I'm just like, what happened?
The best advice I could give anyone still trying to figure out their makeup is stop watching YouTube tutorials. The only thing that you should be watching a tutorial for is like how to glue down your brows or whatever, but like, or like techniques. But if you're looking to, I don't know who has them. I think like Pearl has that one that every queen watched at one point on YouTube. I see. Right. We all did.
It was good, to be fair, but
it was right. It was good. but I think that the more that you get in your head about like, why can't I put this person's makeup on my face correctly, the longer it's going to take to figure that out, because it's like the shape of your face is different. It works
Yeah.
for them, and so they're imparting it as it's like, as if it's like gospel, but
Yeah.
everyone's topography is a little different, and the same shapes aren't going to read the same way. And so it's like, it just takes getting in drag constantly to really figure out what works for your face, because it's what you can do the fastest, what's the most natural for like the shape of your face. It's just like, I don't know, YouTube has really destroyed a lot of the originality, I feel.
Yeah.
Which is upsetting. More people do drag, which is great, but it's,
Yeah.
more people do the same drag.
I was gonna say, like, I'm not a makeup artist in the slightest, but my techniques are like mostly from drag kings, to be quite honest. Like how I got my cheek contours, like literally a drag king technique. So it's just like I feel like people are afraid to like experiment. They just want to like get the I think
They
you
want to
should
look pretty.
they want to look pretty, and I'm like,
Yeah.
I don't know. My whole thing's like I never strive for pretty, I strive for interesting. That's my own philosophy. So if I find
Baby,
pretty,
you nailed it.
thank you. I try. No, I'm always impressed by like how you look. I
Thank
feel like
you.
I've only seen you out in face like a handful of times in person. But you're always the sun. You're always the Bushwick beauty.
The Mad Mondays beauty.
The Mad Mondays beauty.
I have yet to make my debut, but I'm sure.
But you're already
Yeah.
the beauty there.
You're already the beauty. I'll say it on mic. I'll steal the mic and say it. I don't care.
Exactly.
Oh gosh. Well, we've talked about drag families and drag grouplings, I guess, but what is the House of Wax and how are you a part of it?
Well, it's actually an interesting story, and I was thinking of potentially changing the caption of that picture, but it was like, it's Instagram. The app is dead anyways. But the House of Wax was this like idea that some friends and I had, because they were both thinking of starting drag kind of mid last year. And we're still totally friends. But it just kind of never went anywhere. And it was, we wanted to start this little kind of collective together, because we were trying to figure out like what lane our art fit into. And for me, it was drag, and I was encouraging them to get into it a little bit more. And I think drag is something that both of them want to experiment with. But it didn't really, because of, like, New York is just a crazy place and things get busy. And especially when you're a creative, it's easy to get drained very quickly. And being able to have like collaborators is something that I think is useful for drag, but not necessarily useful for other kinds of art, because you're doing labor to like loop someone else in. And I think that it didn't really work out, I guess, how we envisioned it. We have those dope photos, and we did a lot of work last year, but I am currently with my namesake, Little Orphan Annie. I do not have a drag family at the moment, but
I'm sure that's gonna change real quick.
I'm sure that's gonna change. We'll see. But yeah, it was just sort of like a kind of a moment in time. And I think now it's more so like, as I've done drag a lot more than I was previously, like drag family is something that I've been thinking about a lot more, and trying to, gauge a little bit of like how I can try to make that happen, because I would love to, I would love to get adopted and get that advice, because I think that like an older, not even like an age, but just an experienced performer, being able to kind of like be your wingman in a lot of ways, is, when I've competed, it's been useful, but I can only imagine how helpful that is when you like have someone who's constantly, unconditionally like a supporter of your art, kind of showing you the ropes a little bit. And so we'll see. I'm sure it'll happen.
It'll happen.
Yeah.
These Brooklyn families, like,
with how much, right, with
explode.
how big they are. Exactly.
Yeah, no.
I'm a proud orphan, and I'm gonna keep it that way.
I'm like, you have like drag relatives though.
I have drag aunties and such.
Yeah.
I have like 3 fake drag moms too, so it's fine.
Yeah.
But I'm a proud orphan.
You're in witness protection. You can't have a real family.
That's true.
No real family.
And I will never be taking any kids, and I'm fine with that.
Yeah, please God, don't do it.
Tie the tubes.
Yeah.
I just this is more of a tangent on mine, but I just feel like I see a lot of baby queens that'll like just adopt their friends into doing
Yeah.
drag, and it's just like
I
Weird.
don't like it.
I
I
don't like
hate
it
it.
either. I'm like, someone needs to
It's
be
like, what
watching
do
the
you have to
babies.
offer?
Yeah,
I'm like, you all started drag like 1 month apart or something, you know?
yeah.
Like,
Exactly. I don't know.
like
I don't
drag
get it.
sister, yes, but like not drag
Oh
moms.
yeah, drag
Like, I
moms.
don't
Right.
get that.
You can also
Just
just be like sisters. You know what I mean? It's like you
Yeah.
don't have to. It doesn't have to be this whole official like house of, like whatever. Like you can just do drag together, babe. Like that.
Yeah.
It doesn't need to be that deep.
yeah, that's how I see
Exactly.
it.
I agree.
Our last question for this round. We mentioned earlier, but since you've been going back home a little frequently, how has it been like going back into the drag scene there, and specifically performing at Oasis?
That was a great experience, and I'm sure I'll be able to do it again. I took right after Bitchfest when I went home for like the little winter break that I took. I didn't want to do any drag just because I was like, I had probably the most. I was going out like 3, 4 times a week, every week for the past like 4 months. I was just so exhausted. I was like, let me take a little break and kind of feel excited about it again. Um, Especially because I've been doing at least one competition every month since September through December. And that was kind of mentally draining. And so I didn't do any this past, I guess, little like time that I went back into the Bay Area. But over the summer, I was performing all the time, and I was able to do work at a lot of venues that I'd never worked at, and have an experience that I feel like most New York girls don't get, where when you're doing a brunch anywhere else, you do multiple seatings, and I made bank, bitch. But in New York, it's like they'll have you do a number, and
Yeah,
that's it. And what's ironic is like I feel like I don't know. I feel like New York is really missing out on a huge market, and I know that in Manhattan it's more common to do like multiple seatings. But even then, I still feel like I rarely will go to brunches where it's like, okay, like leave. There's another seating. I know that Chickies events, which are at night, there'll be like an early show and a late show, but it's like I would love to be able to see more opportunities for performers here to do what the San Francisco girlies are doing, because it was so much fun. It was exhausting because like I would get out of brunch at like 4 p.m. Um, having gotten drag at like 7, but it's
Christ.
fun. And Oasis is genuinely the most squared away place I've ever worked. I got there, and the producer, within 5 minutes of being there, like handed me my pay for the event. They were like, just keep all your own tips. We'll have some collect them after your number. We'll just bring them to you in a little bucket. The what's it called? The backstage was like beautifully lit. It was gorgeous. It was the only experience I've had where there were go-go dancers who weren't all thin white guys, which was great. All the go-go dancers were like, there were a couple dolls, there were a couple like plus-sized women. It was like amazing because it was like go-go's are like such a fun element of nightlife, and when it's only white cis gay guys, you're like it's a different vibe than when it's just like hot queer naked people dancing around.
Tea.
And so that was great, and I feel like that's not something I see enough. But Oasis is such a gorgeous place, and it was like one of the things I was like shocked by is beforehand they were like, if you have any lighting cues or like you want fire or like smoke, let us know. And I was like, I'm just doing a Blondie number, like I'm okay. But it was so squared away, which I loved. And San Francisco is a really interesting community. It feels very Brooklyn in its
Very
aesthetic, and
Brooklyn.
it's
Mm-hmm.
the hosts really, I feel like, could translate to Brooklyn well, particularly
Absolutely.
Cochina, who if you don't know Cochina Rude, she is just an absolute powerhouse, and she does a lot of like harm reduction stuff, which is amazing, and it's a huge issue in San Francisco. And she gives out free Narcan at like all of her shows to folks that need it. And so
Wow.
San Francisco's an amazing scene, and I'm excited to like work there a little bit more.
Love.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
think the Brooklyn to San Francisco, it's just very similar.
I know.
feel like.
We all
I
need
was-
to have a sleepover.
Yeah. Well, they did like San Francisco night at $3 bill, I think, with
Yeah.
the
I saw
Lady
that,
Camden. Yeah. But
Um,
we need more of it.
I know a few performers in Brooklyn that are from San Fran, and they go for it fairly frequently, I think.
Yeah.
But
Particularly Jay. I think Jay has like a nice
Yeah.
fits into both scenes very well.
yeah,
They would work
definitely.
in San Francisco very well.
On that note, I think we should take our last little break and we'll get into our usual wrap up, kids. Bye.
Bye.
Wig, okay. I know, wig. I feel that already. Wig, okay. Wig, did you just say wig? Wig, okay. I am ready for my wig to go flying.
And we're back. Ooh.
Woo.
A long episode today, kids. We're just
So
talking
long.
and chatting. Caitlin's favorite question, my least favorite question. Annie,
It's a good question.
it's a good question. I just have my personal gripes with it, but it's fine. Annie, do you think you'll ever want to be on Drag Race or Dragula, Camp Wanakiki, whatever the hell Jujubee's doing on TLC?
Painted by Raven.
Painted by Raven. Yeah.
Right. My aspirations of being a Painted with Raven contestant. Big dreams. Did I cut you off, or was that the end of the question?
That was the end of the question. You're good.
Yeah, that's the end of the question.
How do I word this? I'm gonna say yes.
Okay.
I feel like what I do, like it's so weird being a drag performer because I feel like a requirement is blowing smoke up your ass. And I feel like it's also, you kind of toe the line of sounding like an asshole when you like talk about yourself in the third person too much. But something that I will say that I think is, it's not necessarily subjective. I think I've gotten enough feedback on it that like, it is just a pillar of my drag, is like visually out of the gate. I think I've done stuff that is really unique and really like put together. And I think I someday, when I have enough money, hopefully, and I'm in a good position to do it, I want to be able to like showcase what I bring locally at like a super high level. And I want to be able to like show a broader audience like the shit that I do now, but with like a higher budget, a higher platform, all of that stuff. And so the answer is complicated, but I'm gonna put it as a yes eventually, is like the caveat. We'll see how many more seasons they're able to pump out. Maybe I'll be on Canada's Drag Race versus the World 3.
Dupree,
But
the Lux Noir, right?
exactly, with Jujubee as third place, of course. But yeah, I would say that is, a goal of mine, but eventually, because for even with what I'm bringing in Brooklyn now, I'm not anywhere close to feeling like I can even, get on a TV show and be like, I'm Atomic Annie from New York City, because it's like, I need more people to understand, who I am and what my drag means before I, like, New York is the broader audience I'm looking towards right now, but hopefully that goal will expand sooner than later.
Yeah.
And also college. Wrap that up.
So young.
Not that this show is a merit of your skill or your talent, but
For sure.
me and Caitlin usually have a rule of like not having people that are like just starting their drag career, but like the amount of that you've done with from starting is like very impressive. So that's why we're having you on. It's just like, because you're a star, you're great. So not to blow smoke up your ass, but here we are.
No, keep going. I love it.
Keep going. Well, we always want to also interview interesting people, which I think so far this episode has proved.
Yes, you've given us so much to work with. You're great.
You're a star, baby.
You're a star. No, I'm a star.
Honestly, she was snubbed for an Oscar.
She was. And Beyonce was snubbed from a Grammy, but anyways.
I don't even want to talk about Harry Styles. Someone tweeted, they were like, Harry, get in front of me.
Oh my God. Oh Lordy. Okay.
Yeah.
This is old news by the time this episode.
I know. It's fine. It's happening right now. We're mad kids.
Right.
Do you have any future projects you want to promote?
I'm not going to promote any shows because they will have been happened by the time this comes out. You can find me on everything _Atomic Annie, where I will be promoting said projects by, again, the time this releases. And just stay tuned, baby. I've got some really exciting stuff in the works. I'm kind of a little bit of everywhere, and so yeah, we'll see.
So you talked about this a little bit earlier, but what is some of the best advice you've either received or you've given in drag?
What is some of the best advice that I have received? I think that I forget. I think it was during Bitchfest, and it was um the circus week that we had. And Jay, who I am just such a huge fan of, and like every time we hang out, I'm like I fangirl a little bit. But something that they were saying is that there's this like wasn't as it wasn't necessarily advice, it was just something I felt like I needed to feel affirmed of, where they were just speaking to like they were like, there's this confidence that you have that I feel like is really exciting, because it's like it's a very captivating thing to watch as an audience member. And like it is something that I am always the most nervous about, is like having my anxiety read on stage. And to hear someone that I have so much love and respect for as a performer speak to like, I want you to keep doing what you're doing because you project such like this assured vibe when you're performing, is like something that I really needed to hear, because I don't think it was something I could have like convinced myself of. It was like seeing to having someone I respect tell me that they they appreciate the vibe that I give off, and that it doesn't read as nervousness, is it was like special to me, because that's something that is like one of my number one worries when I'm in drag, is projecting anything other than, confidence, which is important.
I was gonna say I don't see you as a not confident person either,
Yeah. And I
so.
think that it's taken a while to tap into. And also like being, I don't think I've mentioned it in this podcast at all, but I think that there's something to be said for like being a very polished, put together performer and being a bigger person. And I think that that's something I've had to navigate too, because I find that skinnier performers will do a whole lot less and receive a lot more accolades for how they look and how they perform. And I think that like being able to be lauded as like a capable performer and not being this twink, and having to learn a little bit differently how to have control over my own body, like is something that I feel like is a really special aspect of like a lot of the bigger queens in New York that I really have so much love for. And so hearing that I project confidence was like very important to hear.
Love.
Yep. That's what we want in our drag
Tea.
For sure.
queens.
I need to learn that,
Right.
but okay, so it's time for my favorite question. Miss Annie, do you have a tantalizing tale of debauchery from nightlife, something crazy, something stupid, something that you need to tell everybody else?
I've only worked with her once, and I'm hoping to again, but I'm sure we will. The very first time I went out and performed / competed was when Janelle No. 5 was still doing the Are You the Next Diva like weekly version, and then the winners would go on, of course, to do the pageant. And it was the very first time I performed in drag, and I made it all the way to the top 2.
Oh wow.
And I had a great experience doing it. And but I was performing, and I was in a look that I felt great about, and I had met a lot. It was one of my first times. I think it was probably my first time interacting with other drag queens in drag. And so it was just this, I was like so nervous about the competition. I didn't even think about, like meeting other girls. And it turned out that like girls I would do that with, I've worked with plenty of times afterwards. But about halfway through, I had done my performance, and they were calling who the finalists were. And Lux Noir London was one of the judges, which in hindsight is crazy to think about. And she now is like the drag mom of a friend of mine. And like, it's just this whole interesting incestuous thing is the New York drag scene. But about halfway through the night, I would say, it was after I'd done my first performance, they were calling who the top 4 was and kind of do little like lip sync offs. Simone came in with a bunch of her friends, and I got to perform in front of her, and I won a lip sync, and I got to do the top 2. And then like afterwards, I was sort of like so overwhelmed by the whole experience that I was like, I'm not going to be weird. I don't even know what to say. And she from across the room, like locks eyes with me and points at me and then just walks over off in the little corner. And she just kind of like spoke affirmations at me and was like, I'm sorry you didn't win, but like, I really see something in you. And I do not want you to stop doing this because like, there's something really intriguing about your drag. And I find you super special. And I was like, it's something I'll literally never forget because it was like the very first time I performed in drag, and one of these like absolute modern legends of drag was able to see that and like see something in me. So every time I feel that insecurity, it's like the very first time I performed, which I could probably look back on embarrassed about, you know, someone who I have so much respect for saw, you know, potential.
That's
Yeah, it was
crazy.
so sweet.
Yeah.
It was
That is
fucking
not a
sweet.
normal drag story.
Yeah.
Not at all.
Aw, that's sweet. Oh, that's so good though.
Yeah.
I love when that happens. Just like someone random that you really admire is in the audience and they just give you everything you need.
And New York is totally one of those places too, you know,
Yeah.
like where you can go out just being like, I'm going to do, you know, this guest spot at someone's show, and the night can snowball. And then you're like, you know, getting high with a Rue girl and she's like giving you life advice. And it's like, you know, 4 a.m. You have work the next morning. It's
Yeah.
a lot, but you know, that's the beauty of it.
We're in New York.
You're up until 4 a.m. You at work at 6 a.m. But baby, you're there.
Exactly. Right.
You just described my entire 20s.
I know.
Exactly.
All right, last question. Where do you want to take your drag in the future?
I just want it to be bigger. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like it's a little bit cheesy, but like, I just want to sort of take what I'm doing and kind of crank up the level at which I'm doing it. I want to add more detail to the looks that I'm bringing and the performances that I'm doing. And I look up to so many people in the scene that have really created this like amazing path forward from being these queens that have really developed through COVID. That, you know, seeing the trajectory they've been on, I think it's right now it's about like getting, like, I know what I'm bringing is unique and it has a point of view, and I just want more people to see it, and figuring out ways to do that I think is kind of my biggest thing. And I have some exciting stuff coming up, and so yeah, y'all will see that in action, I hope.
I'll be there. First in
Cheers.
line.
Cheers.
I'll come too.
Well, thank you so much, babe, for
Yay.
talking to us.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. Where
We'll
can
have
the
you on once you like make it bigger.
Yes.
Period.
I'm
Do
writing
part two.
I'm writing the contract right now, so you are legally required to come
Yeah.
back.
Done.
Exactly.
A biannual podcast.
Yes.
Yes.
Where can the kids find you online?
They can find me _Atomic Annie everywhere, except for Venmo, which is just Atomic Annie. And you can see all the cool shit that I'm doing, and you can come see me.
Beautiful. Thank you again,
Stunning.
babe.
Yeah, thank you guys for having me.
Of course. I was Martyr,
I was Sweet Pepper.
and this
I
was
was Atomic Annie.
and this is Wing It Out.
Woo!
Bye
Bye.
kids. See you in like a week. Bye.
Oh yeah, you're right.